This week's topic is a stakeholder and a stakeholder analysis. When we look to competence R in the RESVIA plus G competences, we see that for responsibility you must be able creating a stakeholder analysis. And when you want to be able creating a stakeholder analysis, you must know, of course, what a stakeholder is and what is meant by a stakeholder analysis. And you also need to understand what is the link between stakeholder analysis and corporate social responsibility. Well, to start with the last, we can broaden our definition of CSR as follows. CSR can be considered the conscious direction of business activities towards creating value in 3 dimensions for the longer term by finding a balance for the interest of all stakeholders. And in this definition, the most important aspects are made red. So the 3 dimensions are an important aspect of CSR, triple P. The longer term perspective is very important for CSR, but also the balance between all stakeholders. And what are stakeholders? Well, the definition of stakeholders is all those directly and indirectly affected by the operation of any enterprise or organization. And you can find these stakeholders in all 3 dimensions of the triple P. So stakeholder is a very broad keyword. Many are stakeholders of a company or organization. You can see this in this table in which the stakeholders are related to the 3 dimensions. So in the prosperity or profit dimension, for instance, shareholders are stakeholders, the owners of a company. But among the shareholders often are pension funds, so indirectly all workers or pensioners are also stakeholders of a company. Often shareholders are also ethical investors who have certain moral values high in their priorities. But for governmental organizations or not-for-profit organizations, for instance, taxpayers or contributors are stakeholders who are interested in an efficient way in which organizations operate. In the social dimension, referred to with the P of people, stakeholders are, for instance, employee, consumers, neighbors, all people for their human rights, and this stakeholder is represented, for instance, by Amnesty International or by the United Nations or by Human Rights Watch. Suppliers are considered to be stakeholders, but also, for instance, future generations. In the environmental dimension, the planet dimension, for instance, these interests are represented by the United Nations, for instance, for the climate change problem, but for many other environmental problems, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, represent these interests. For instance, Greenpeace, the World Wildlife Fund, and there are, of course, many others. So what is a stakeholder analysis? So a stakeholder analysis is that a company or an organization must first make an inventory of all stakeholders. And secondly, define the interests of these stakeholders and also value the importance. And there we have the link with environmental economy. For instance, when you have to make a decision to cut down a forest and to make to build there a factory, you must compare the financial economic value and the value of jobs related to the value of and the importance for people of a forest where you can walk and breathe fresh air. And the last aspect of a stakeholder analysis is that you describe that you finally balance all these interests of the stakeholders. And you can read more about this subject in RORDA at pages 317 and 217 and 311.